Before I get started, I'd like to kindly ask that you hit the like button and leave a comment, and please subscribe to the channel for more content just like this.
All I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
You know, I made a promise to myself after watching WandaVision that I would never waste my time on another Marvel Disney Plus show ever again. Well, last night I broke that promise to myself, and today I am filled with regret. All I've heard about this show is how it's different, and how it's unlike anything the MCU has ever produced. And after watching it, I can confirm that it is unique in certain aspects, but those aspects do not make it a good show.
That makes sense.
To me, this show is the very definition of does not need to exist. Now, full disclosure, I am not a Moon Knight fan, and I know very little about the character. He's always kind of struck me as a Batman ripoff, which I know a lot of other people share the same sentiment. But apparently for this show, in an effort to not draw those comparisons to Batman, they altered his character drastically.
No shit.
Now, I don't give a shit about that, but I have to imagine there are people out there who are looking forward to seeing this character for the first time, and those people are most likely going to be disappointed. I would venture to say that most of them would be straight up pissed off. Moon Knight to me feels like a joke, and in typical MCU fashion, they have dumbed his character down so much that he is nearly unrecognizable. Even his very distinctive appearance feels off to me. How exactly do we go from this to this?
What the hell am I looking at?
They've taken a somewhat visually interesting character who was also somewhat physically imposing and turned him into a cartoon character. Even if you are one of the people who think this show is at least decent or just alright. Is decent or alright acceptable enough to make you want to watch a 6 to 8 episode show? I don't know about any of you, but my time is more valuable. If I'm watching a 6 to 8 episode show, I'm expecting them to keep me invested the entire time. And based on 2 episodes, if I wasn't a critic and it wasn't part of my job description, I wouldn't have touched this show with a 10-foot pole.
Get what you fucking deserve!
But I know some people out there might be curious about my thoughts, so here we go. Moon Knight follows Steven, a weirdo loser wimp vegan who gets disrespected by his boss regularly and talks to mute street performers. He's also dealing with the situation that sometimes he blacks out and ends up in places where he has no idea how he got there. He also hears a voice in his head that sounds like a discount Sean Connery.
Where's your connection?
You sound like a cop to me.
And it turns out that this is the voice of the Egyptian moon god Khonshu. Steven in this show is essentially the new Marvel poster boy for mental health awareness, because let's be honest, that's what the weirdos on Twitter want their heroes to be now. They want their heroes to be weird and awkward like them, so they can fawn over them, call them cute, and eventually ship them with the Winter fucking Soldier. Do you need any more proof that these shows are not made for traditional comic book fans anymore?
Oh, what a loser!
So Steven ends up being in possession of a scarab that crazy cult leader Ethan Hawke needs to find the tomb of the god who possesses him. There's a car chase sequence in the first episode that I swear to God is one of the worst action sequences I've ever seen. Not only is it 90% CGI, but it also has this slapstick tone that pretty much removes any tension that would have been in the scene otherwise. Because we all know that Marvel Studios despises tension and does everything to break it.
Had you ever heard of the healing power of laughter?
It turns out that Steven is an avatar of sorts for this moon god, and he also has an alternate personality living inside of him that's called Mark. And when Steven is attacked later in the episode by a creature, Mark asks him if he can take over, and that's when we get our first look at Moon Knight. Now, sometimes he apparently takes over without asking. Why is that? I have no idea, but who cares? And when we finally get to see the Moon Knight outfit, the only way that I can describe it is underwhelming.
That's right, it stinks!
Remember the CGI suit from Green Lantern that everyone hated? And rightfully so? Well, apparently that's Marvel's new MO. Lazy CGI suits that only make the practical suits of the past look more and more official every day. Does this CGI look like they are putting maximum effort into this show? I don't think so, but people are going to eat it up anyway, so we're never going to get anything different.
Fuck me, right?
It felt like the whole first episode kind of wanted to bring that Tom Hardy Venom energy to the show, because you have voices in his head and there's constant back and forth between them that's supposed to be entertaining, but ultimately it's not as fun and it ends up being much more been there done that than anything. And then we move on to episode 2, which I wanted to give a chance because I thought maybe the show needed time to develop. But no, episode 2 was just as bad, if not worse. They continue to hammer home the idea that Steven is a complete loser and also way out of his element.
I'm having trouble.
Steven finds a storage locker where apparently his alter ego Mark operates out of, and Steven decides very early on that this is all just him going crazy, and he's going to need some pills to get rid of it all. So now Moon Knight is a PSA on the dependency of people to use drugs when dealing with mental health issues. Just what I want from a superhero show. This is where we meet Mark's wife Layla, and of course Steven has no idea who she is, because again Steven can lose days of his life being Mark, even though we don't really have an explanation how that's possible.
We ain't found shit!
Layla eventually steals the Scarab from Steven, and she is ultimately teased as the replacement for Mark and Steven, so basically we're just setting up the inevitable bait and switch. Female Moon Knight is incoming, and she's already better at everything than the original is. Yes, Queen! Steven is eventually brought to Ethan Hawke's Inner Sanctum, where his whole plan is revealed. You see, his goddess that uses him basically judges people before they do anything wrong, almost like Minority Report. And good old Steven has to point out that children are always innocent, and this is where our conflict is coming from. Eventually, Layla shows up to bail him out and they are attacked by yet another creature. Only this time, Steven doesn't turn control over to Mark. He actually manifests his own version of Moon Knight, which amounts to him with a white mask and a Colonel Sanders suit.
What's the matter, Colonel Sanders? Chicken?
This is probably the most cringe moment in the show so far, as Mr. Knight laughably taunts the creature and eventually celebrates prematurely when he thinks he defeated it. And this is the version of the character that I'm sure is going to be a hit with some people, because he is a useless buffoon who dances around like a clown. But again, Steven has to hand control over to Mark because he's completely useless. $100 says Mr. Knight is the one who ends up saving the day, probably in a dance-off or some shit like that. Because we have to make everything quirky and goofy to keep the normies invested.
We give them what they want!
The second episode ends with Moon Knight defeating the creature again, and then Mark refuses to relinquish control back to Steven. Again, all the rules about who gets control over who and how have very loose guidelines throughout the course of the 2 episodes. But fuck it, it's not like anyone is going to ask these questions anyway. I believe that Moon Knight is a complete embarrassment to the comic book genre, and it's very clear to me that this was made for the Twitter crowd in order to get this new legion of fans behind the character, and not for the comic book fans who supported the character from the very beginning.
Why do these things always happen to me?
This show has all the makings of another waste of time and a completely lackluster payoff. For the life of me, I cannot figure out how this has an 87% on Rotten Tomatoes at the time I recorded this, or a 94% audience score, other than the obvious reason that it has Marvel Studios in the title, so that instantly makes it a hit. The MCU effect strikes again, ladies and gentlemen.
Man, I'm tired of being right.
I know that Disney Plus subscriptions have been going down recently, but I can't understand how more didn't cancel after watching this. This is how much Disney respects you, as well as the source material, because this is the garbage that they deliver to us. So let me know what you thought about all this in the comments down below. As always, please like, comment, share, subscribe to the channel, hit that bell for notifications, and I'll see you next time right here on Real Shift. Thanks for watching. Peace out.
Y'all be cool. Right on.